Imagine this. You're living your life one ordinary day after another when suddenly something happens, something that shakes the very foundation of your reality. That's what happened to a family in a quiet neighborhood, a family just like any other. But everything changed when a single shoe, buried in the attic, was found. A shoe that, at first glance, seemed to be nothing more than an ordinary object. But this small, seemingly insignificant piece of clothing would soon unravel a chain of events that no one could have ever predicted. This is a story that will pull at your heartstrings, leave you questioning everything you thought you knew, and, most importantly, keep you on the edge of your seat. You won't believe what happens next. Stick with me, and I promise, you'll get the answers you came here for. Let me set the scene for you. It all started a decade ago. A seemingly normal day turned into a parent's worst nightmare when their young child, only 6 years old, vanished without a trace. One minute, they were playing outside, laughing and enjoying their afternoon. The next, they were gone, without a sound, without a clue. The local police searched high and low, scoured the neighborhood, and even turned to social media in hopes of finding a trace of the child. But after weeks of relentless searching, the case went cold. The family, devastated and heartbroken, was left in the dark, grasping at straws, wondering if they'd ever see their child again. What followed were years of silence, years of unanswered questions, years of wondering what could have possibly happened to their little one. As time passed, the hope of finding them began to fade. But then, just when they had all but given up, a simple discovery would change everything. You may be asking yourself, how could one shoe, tucked away in an attic, hold the key to a mystery that had remained unsolved for so long? Trust me, I get it. It seems like an ordinary object, right? But there was something different about this shoe, something that would reveal a hidden truth that no one saw coming. And it wasn't just the shoe that had been hidden away for years. There were clues, pieces of a puzzle, left behind in plain sight, hidden in places the family never thought to look. As the parents began to unravel the mystery, they realized that this discovery was only the tip of the iceberg. What they uncovered in their own home shook them to their core and changed their entire understanding of what happened to their child. Now, before I go any further, I want you to stop and think for a moment. Imagine being in their shoes. Imagine being a parent, desperate for answers, and discovering that the truth was hidden right under your nose all along. How would you react? What would you do? The parents in this story were about to find out, and so are you. As you continue watching, I'll guide you through the twists and turns, the moments of doubt, and the shocking revelations that follow. Every piece of this mystery is important, and it all leads to one thing: the truth. But the truth isn't always what we expect, and this one is no different. As we move forward, I want you to remember one thing. The answers you're looking for won't come easily. The road to discovery is full of dead ends, false leads, and painful realizations. But it's a journey worth taking, one that will bring closure to a story that has haunted this family for far too long. So stick with me. I'm about to take you on a journey that will leave you questioning everything. And by the time we reach the end, you'll have the answers you've been waiting for. Answers that, just like this shoe, were hidden in plain sight all along. But what did the shoe really mean? What could it tell us about where the child had gone? What secrets were buried deep in the attic, waiting to be uncovered? And what did the family discover when they realized this was just the beginning of something much bigger than they could ever imagine? Stay tuned, because the next part of the story will leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. As the parents delved deeper into the mystery of the missing child, the attic, once just a forgotten storage space, began to reveal its secrets. At first, the discovery of the shoe seemed like a random, almost inconsequential event. But when the mother, driven by a sense of unease that had been lingering since the child's disappearance, started revisiting old memories, everything began to shift. Something about the shoe didn't sit right with her. She had never seen it before, and it was far too small to belong to any of the other children they had since had. It was almost as if it had been placed there deliberately, left behind as a silent signal, waiting for the right moment to be found. But before we get lost in that discovery, let's rewind a little. The child, Emma, was always a curious, adventurous soul. From the day she could walk, she was exploring the world around her, asking questions about everything, her wide eyes constantly searching for new adventures. Emma's disappearance wasn't just a shock to her family, it was a blow to the entire community. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a trail of unanswered questions and shattered hearts. The police had investigated every lead. They questioned the neighbors, the school teachers, even the family friends. But there was never a solid lead, and after a few months, the case went cold. The only thing the family had left were memories, and memories can sometimes be more painful than the harshest of truths. In the years that followed, the parents tried to move on. They had other children, of course, but the void Emma left behind could never be filled. The mother, in particular, struggled to let go, often finding herself in quiet moments of reflection, wondering what happened that fateful day. There were nights when she would walk through the house, running her hands along Emma's old things, the books, the drawings, the stuffed animals, and wonder if she had missed something. Was there a clue she had overlooked in the past? Could she have done something differently? It was during one of these moments of quiet searching that she stumbled upon the shoe. It wasn't just tucked away in a box or buried beneath old blankets. It was placed in a corner of the attic, underneath a pile of forgotten furniture, as though it had been deliberately hidden. The fabric was still soft to the touch, as though it had only recently been worn. But there was no sign of wear on the shoe that would indicate it had been out of sight for as long as it had. The more she stared at it, the more she realized that it wasn't just an ordinary object. This was a message from the past, if only she could decode it. In the days following the discovery, the mother began to search the house more thoroughly, almost obsessively. She started to go through every drawer, every closet, every old photograph album, looking for something, anything that could explain Emma's disappearance. That was when she started finding other strange things, small, almost insignificant objects tucked away in places they had no right to be. A hairpin hidden in the floorboards, a half-empty bottle of perfume that hadn't been used in years, a letter sealed with an unfamiliar wax stamp. Everything was leading her to believe that someone or something had been in her house long after Emma had disappeared. And it wasn't just random objects either. There were signs that indicated someone had been moving around in the house, searching for something. Just like she was, as the mystery deepened, the mother's suspicions turned toward the people closest to her. It wasn't just the house that fell off, it was the people around her. There were strange inconsistencies in their stories. A neighbor, who had always seemed harmless, suddenly started avoiding eye contact when she asked about Emma. A childhood friend of Emma's, who had once been so eager to help, suddenly vanished without a trace when the mother needed information. Even her own husband began acting strangely, distant, almost cold, as if he was hiding something from her. Could it be that someone in her circle had something to do with Emma's disappearance? Or was it possible that the person closest to her was hiding a dark secret? The clues were scattered, fragmented like pieces of a broken puzzle. Each discovery only raised more questions, and no one seemed to be offering any answers. Was it possible that someone had orchestrated Emma's disappearance, planting false clues along the way, leading the family on a wild goose chase? Was it a stranger with an unspeakable motive, or was it someone they knew, someone they trusted? The deeper she dug, the more questions emerged, and with each answer, another mystery took its place. Then, one afternoon, something unsettling happened. The father, who had always been the more grounded of the two, seemed to snap. He had been working late, trying to make sense of the mounting chaos, when he came home looking pale and shaken. He refused to talk about his day, brushing off his wife's questions with curt replies. But later that evening, he found a strange piece of paper on his desk, something that hadn't been there before. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words were unmistakable. The truth is buried in the attic, and it's not just the shoe. That message, that cryptic warning, sent chills down his spine. Who had left it there? Was it another clue? And what did it mean that the truth was buried? With every step forward, the tension mounted. The question of whether Emma was still alive loomed in the back of everyone's mind. Could she have been taken somewhere, hidden in plain sight? Had someone been watching the family all these years, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth? And what was the significance of the attic? Could it really hold the key to everything, or was it just another dead end in a case that had been broken for far too long? The deeper the parents went into this journey, the darker it became. As they pieced together the unsettling fragments of their life, they realized that what they were uncovering wasn't just the disappearance of a child. It was a much larger conspiracy, one that tied together years of secrets, lies, and betrayal. And the answers they were so desperately searching for? They might just lead them to an even greater mystery, one that could change everything they thought they knew about the people around them. The more they uncovered, the more they began to question who they could really trust. Were they looking for Emma, or were they uncovering something far more sinister? The truth was out there, somewhere, but it was buried deeper than anyone could have ever imagined. The days that followed the discovery of the cryptic message only brought more confusion and danger. As the parents began to push forward with their investigation, their once peaceful home seemed to turn against them. The more they uncovered, the more obstacles appeared in their path, as though someone, or something, was deliberately trying to stop them. At first, it was small things. A drawer left open that they were sure had been closed. An old family photograph, one they had always kept in a frame in the living room, missing from its place. But then, the obstacles began to take a darker turn. It started when the father decided to revisit the attic. He had spent hours there already, searching through boxes of old memories, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain what happened to Emma. But as he moved one of the old trunks, he saw something that made his heart race. Beneath the dust and old clothing, there was a box, taped shut, with Emma's name written on it. It was the one thing they hadn't touched. The one thing they had both avoided, too afraid to open it in fear of what they might find inside. Now, it felt like fate had led him there. But when he opened it, he found that the box was empty. Not a single item was inside. The feeling of cold dread settled deep in his bones. Someone had been here. Someone had gotten to the one piece of evidence they thought was safe. The realization hit him hard. Whoever was trying to stop them was getting closer. But it wasn't just the missing box that unsettled him. Over the past few days, strange things had been happening around the house. The couple's neighbor, a woman who had always been helpful during their darkest moments, suddenly became distant. She stopped answering their calls and would give them a cold, almost fearful look when they crossed paths. At first, they dismissed it, but soon they began to wonder if there was something more to her behavior. And then, one night, as the father was heading out to his car, he noticed a figure standing at the edge of their property, just beyond the streetlights. It was a man, someone he didn't recognize. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. When the father approached, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows. It was only when he turned back to the house that he noticed something else. On the porch, just outside the door, was a small, crumpled note. It was the same handwriting as the cryptic message he had found earlier. This time it read, "Stop digging. The truth is dangerous." The chilling warning felt like a blow to his chest. Who was this person? And what did they mean by "the truth is dangerous"? Was someone threatening them to stay quiet? Was the mystery deeper than they had imagined? These questions gnawed at the father's mind, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt an undeniable urge to press on. He couldn't stop now. He couldn't let fear take hold. But as the days went by, it became clear that there was something much darker at play, something far beyond a simple missing child case. The couple's investigation had already revealed unsettling clues about the past. Their once trusted ally, a private investigator they had hired to help them find answers, had begun acting strangely. At first, the investigator was eager, promising to dig into the hidden corners of Emma's disappearance, and even suggesting they look into people who had been close to them years ago. But over time, his behavior changed. He became defensive, dodging calls, giving half-hearted responses when they pressed him for details, and his excuses for being unavailable grew more and more frequent. Something wasn't right. Was the investigator hiding something from them? Or worse, had he been involved in the disappearance all along? The questions spiraled out of control. The more they learned, the more they began to realize that the people they trusted most might not be who they appeared to be. Their friends, their neighbors, even their own family, everyone seemed to have a secret. The mother began to notice strange things in their social media history too. Old photos of Emma, photos that had been shared among family members and friends, began to disappear from their accounts. Deleted, as if they never existed. When she confronted her sister, who had been one of the last people to see Emma before she vanished, her sister grew visibly uncomfortable. The conversation turned cold. She couldn't seem to look her in the eye. That same evening, when the mother returned home, she found another note on the doorstep. This one was different. It was a single word. Enough. They were being silenced. Whoever was behind this was going to great lengths to stop them from uncovering the truth, and the deeper they dug, the more the walls closed in. But it wasn't just the mystery of Emma's disappearance that was haunting them now. It was the past, hidden beneath the surface, that was threatening to destroy everything. The couple began to realize that the events of Emma's disappearance were linked to something far more personal, something buried in the past, a betrayal, a secret event that no one had ever spoken of. What was it? What had happened years ago that had set all of this into motion? Just when they thought they might be on the verge of uncovering it all, the mother received an unexpected phone call. It was the private investigator. He sounded frantic, his voice shaking. "You need to stop," he pleaded. "You don't know what you're getting into. You have no idea what you're dealing with." He hung up before she could respond, leaving her with more questions than answers. Was the investigator trying to warn her, or was he simply afraid of what they were about to uncover? And why was he so insistent on them stopping their search? The pieces of the puzzle were almost within reach, but the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. The whispers of betrayal, the missing evidence, the cryptic warnings, it was all starting to feel like a conspiracy. And the couple, once sure they were on the right path, now found themselves caught in a web of lies, deceit, and hidden motives that stretched further back than they ever imagined. They were closer than ever to the truth, but was it a truth they could handle? And more importantly, was there anyone left they could trust? As the tension reached its breaking point, a new revelation surfaced. Someone had been watching them the entire time. And just when they thought they had the upper hand, just when they thought they were one step closer to uncovering the truth, the unexpected happened. A twist so shocking that it left them questioning everything they thought they knew. What was it? The answer is coming soon, but trust me, it's a twist you'll never see coming. Just when it seemed like the walls of mystery were finally beginning to crack, something unexpected happened. The mother, overwhelmed by the mounting tension and the relentless pursuit of the truth, decided to reach out to her sister for support, hoping that, despite the awkwardness of their recent conversation, they could join forces and make sense of everything. But when she arrived at her sister's house, something felt off. The door was ajar, and the lights inside flickered as though they were struggling to stay on. She stepped inside cautiously, her heart racing, but found the place completely silent, eerily still. It was as if the house had been abandoned overnight, but the unsettling thing was that there were signs of life, recent signs. The smell of coffee lingered in the kitchen, and the television was left on, its volume low, playing an old black-and-white movie that no one had bothered to turn off. Her sister's car was still parked in the driveway, but there was no answer when the mother called out her name. The air felt thick with tension, like a storm was about to break. As she moved through the house, something on the kitchen counter caught her eye. It was a note, folded neatly in half, and addressed to her. She recognized the handwriting instantly. It was her sister's, but the words, scrawled hastily across the paper, made her blood run cold. "Stop asking questions. They're watching. I've already lost too much." Panic began to rise in her chest as she glanced around the house, suddenly aware that she wasn't alone. Was her sister trying to warn her? Or had something happened to her? The thought was terrifying, and before she could make sense of it, she heard a sound, footsteps coming from upstairs. Without thinking, she rushed up the stairs, only to find the room she had shared with her sister growing colder as the temperature dropped. On the bed, her sister's old diary lay open, a passage highlighted with a yellow marker. "If I tell you, I'll lose everything. They'll come for us next." The chilling words echoed in her mind as she continued to search the room. A strange sense of dread settled in her stomach, and the more she tried to make sense of the situation, the more questions arose. What had her sister known? What was she trying to tell her? And who were they? Just as she was about to head back downstairs, her phone buzzed and the screen flashed with a message. It was from her husband, who was clearly frantic, and the tone of his text only intensified the growing sense of urgency. "We have to meet. Now. It's about Emma. There's something you need to see. Don't tell anyone." Her heart skipped a beat. What could be more important than everything she had already uncovered? Was it connected to the missing box in the attic? The threatening messages? The warning from the private investigator? Desperate for answers, she made her way to the meeting place her husband had chosen, an old cafe they had frequented during their younger years. But as she sat at the table, waiting for him to arrive, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The cafe, once a place of comfort and familiarity, felt strange, almost foreign. Her mind raced as she glanced around the room, scanning the faces of the other patrons, but she couldn't focus. And then, just as she was about to stand up and leave, her husband appeared, his face ashen, his eyes wide with fear. Without a word, he slid a folder across the table toward her. The folder was thick, and as she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside were photographs, photos of her daughter, Emma, but they weren't the ones they had taken in happier times. These were different. These were photos of Emma at various points in her life, from when she was only a toddler to just before she disappeared. But the most disturbing thing about the photos was not Emma's smiling face, but the people who were standing behind her in each one. Faces she recognized, but only vaguely. They were blurred out in the most recent photo, a haunting image of Emma standing in front of an abandoned building, as if someone had deliberately erased the faces of the people who had been with her. There was no caption, no context, only these disturbing, unexplainable images. The same feeling of dread from earlier swept over her again. Someone had been watching her daughter, following her, long before she had even disappeared. Her husband's voice broke through the silence. "There's more, but you won't believe it. I didn't believe it until I saw it for myself." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Emma was never supposed to be in those places. She was never supposed to know those people. But someone in our past made sure she did. And now they're watching us all. But before they could discuss it further, a loud crash sounded from outside the cafe. The windows rattled as if something heavy had hit the ground, and the entire room fell into silence. People began to scramble, unsure of what was happening, but it was clear that the world outside had just shifted. Their investigation had taken a dangerous turn. The stakes were higher than ever, and just as the tension began to build, a new shockwave of chaos swept through their lives. As they rushed outside to see what was happening, the sight that greeted them was beyond anything they could have imagined. Their car, parked just a few feet away from the cafe, had been smashed into, the windows shattered, the doors crumpled, as if someone had purposely destroyed it. But the most chilling detail was the small, black envelope that had been left on the driver's seat. It was sealed with wax, and the words "Stop Now" were scrawled on the front in blood-red ink. The message was clear. Whoever was behind this, whoever had been pulling the strings all along, was sending them a direct threat. And they were not going to stop until they silenced the truth. The chilling realization hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about something far bigger, something so deeply rooted in their past that even now, as the pieces began to fall into place, she could barely comprehend it. But one thing was certain: if they didn't uncover the truth soon, there would be no turning back. And what they would uncover could shatter everything they thought they knew about their family, their friends, and the life they once had. The clock was ticking, and the danger was closing in. The moment the envelope hit the seat of their car, the world around them seemed to freeze. The once familiar street, bathed in the warm glow of streetlights, suddenly felt alien, threatening. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest, each breath shallow and quick as the dark reality of it all sank in. Her husband, though visibly shaken, was already looking around, his eyes scanning the empty street as though expecting someone to jump out at them. The tension was unbearable, but there was no time to process it, no time to gather their thoughts. Something had just changed. They were no longer merely investigating the disappearance of their daughter. They were now caught in the middle of something far darker, something that had been silently tracking them all along. The truth was too dangerous to discover, and yet it was already too late to back out. Her heart pounded as she glanced at the envelope, the red ink seeping into her mind like poison, a warning she couldn't ignore. They had been warned before, but now it was different. This was personal. Someone was watching them, tracking their every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. But who? Who could have this much control over their lives? Who could have orchestrated this web of lies, this slow descent into chaos? The question spun in her mind like a whirlwind, and the more she thought about it, the more paranoid she became. It was as if every corner they turned, every door they opened, led them deeper into a nightmare they couldn't escape. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, a man in a dark jacket, standing across the street, his face hidden in the shadows. The street was empty, the world around them eerily quiet, and yet, somehow, she knew. This man was watching them, following them. Her instinct screamed at her to get out, to run, to hide, but before she could react, the figure vanished into the darkness, swallowed by the night. She wasn't sure if it was the stress, the fear, or the creeping paranoia, but she knew deep down that they weren't alone. They were being hunted. They rushed back to their house, the feeling of eyes on them growing stronger with every step. When they arrived, the door was ajar, just like at her sister's house earlier that evening. But unlike before, this time, the house felt colder. The familiar warmth of home was gone, replaced by a chill that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. Her husband bolted through the door, but she hesitated, looking over her shoulder, certain they were being followed. She felt a creeping dread wrap around her like a vice. Was the man across the street the same person who had sent the envelope? Or was it someone else? And more terrifyingly, how long had they been watched? How many people had been involved in this conspiracy? Inside the house, her husband was already on the phone, his voice low, tense. She could hear the words, "No, it wasn't supposed to happen like this, and you need to leave now," as he spoke with someone. Whoever it was clear that they were part of the same tangled web she was now trapped in, a web that had been spun long before she realized the stakes. A strange feeling washed over her. She had always thought she knew her husband, his strengths, his flaws, the way his mind worked, but in that moment, she realized she didn't know him at all. She didn't know what secrets he had kept from her, what lies he had told, or who he was really working with. The thought of it made her stomach churn, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was even safe in her own home anymore. But as the minutes ticked by, something else happened that made the danger feel even more real. Her son, Noah, had disappeared. He was supposed to be in his room, playing a video game, but when she went to check on him, his bed was empty. Panic flooded her veins, and she rushed through the house, calling his name, her voice growing more frantic with each passing second. She burst into every room, checked every closet, and even searched the attic, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The terror of the unknown gripped her heart, and she froze in the hallway, her mind racing. How could he be gone? Had they taken him? Was Noah the next target? Had someone, knowing that she was digging deeper, decided to use him as leverage to stop her from uncovering the truth? Just when the panic was about to overwhelm her, she heard the faintest sound, Noah's voice, soft and distant, coming from the backyard. Without hesitation, she ran outside, calling for him, her mind still racing with fear and suspicion. But what she found wasn't her son, it was something far worse. There, standing in the middle of the backyard, was a single object lying on the ground, Noah's favorite stuffed bear. The one he had carried with him everywhere since he was a toddler. It was torn, its seams frayed, and a note had been tucked inside its belly. Trembling, she pulled the note out, her hands shaking as she read the words scrawled in the same blood-red ink. "Stop or he's next." Her breath caught at her throat, and for a moment, the world around her seemed to collapse. She was no longer just a mother searching for her missing child. She was now someone who had crossed a line, someone who had uncovered secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. And now her son was being used against her. The stakes had been raised, and the danger was no longer just a shadow lurking in the distance. It was right here, in her backyard, threatening to tear her world apart. As her eyes filled with tears, the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. There was no way out.
Not now.
Not unless she uncovered the truth. But how could she do that when every clue seemed to lead her deeper into a maze of darkness and danger? She knew that time was running out. Every minute that passed felt like a countdown, and with every piece of evidence, the danger grew closer. The silence that followed was suffocating. For a moment, she just stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, unable to move, unable to breathe. Everything Mia had just said felt like a punch to the gut, each word sinking deeper into her mind, twisting everything she thought she knew. Was it possible? Had her husband been hiding something all along? Had the mystery been pointing toward the wrong person from the beginning? She didn't even give herself time to think. She grabbed her keys, rushing out of the house and driving toward the one place she had been avoiding, the attic. The one place she had been told to stay away from, the one place she had subconsciously feared for reasons she couldn't explain. She pulled into the driveway, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The house loomed before her, dark and silent. And yet, the hairs on the back of her neck prickled, as if it were more alive than it had ever been. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, oppressive, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover the truth. She made her way to the attic stairs, her steps slow and cautious, her mind racing with possibilities. Mia's words echoed in her mind. The shoe wasn't just a clue. It was a warning. But a warning from whom?
And why?
And what was her husband involved in? Was this really about her missing daughter, or was it something far more sinister? The attic was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of the hallway below. She hesitated for a moment, but then pushed open the door, stepping into the eerie silence of the space. There, under a pile of forgotten boxes and old furniture, was the shoe, the one she had found days ago. But this time, there was something different about it, something she hadn't noticed before. In the darkness, the shoe looked almost staged. There was no dust on it, no sign that it had been tucked away for years. It looked fresh, out of place, almost as though it had been deliberately placed there for her to find. Her heart raced as she knelt down to inspect it, her hands trembling. But when she reached inside, her fingers brushed against something else, something soft, hidden within the shoe's lining. Pulling it out, she gasped as the truth hit her like a freight train. It was a photograph. A photo of her husband. But he wasn't alone. He was standing with a woman, someone she didn't recognize, but who looked strangely familiar. Behind them was a building she couldn't place, a location she'd never seen before. But the most chilling part was the date written on the back of the photo, 10 years ago. Suddenly, everything shifted. The shoe, the mystery, the threats, it all became clear. Her husband wasn't just hiding something from her, he had been involved in something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. A secret past that had been carefully buried, hidden in plain sight, waiting for her to uncover it. And in that moment, she realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't just about a missing child anymore. This was about a long-buried secret that someone would kill to protect. And her family had unknowingly walked right into the middle of it. The photograph in her hand felt heavier than it should have been. Each glance at it seemed to deepen the pit in her stomach, as if she were holding onto a piece of truth that would unravel everything she thought she knew about her life, about her family. The image of her husband and the unfamiliar woman was like a ghost from a past she had never been allowed to see. But now, it seemed as though the past had finally caught up with them. The date on the back of the photo haunted her, the years between then and now only adding to the cold dread seeping into her bones. What had happened a decade ago that no one, not even her husband, had been willing to speak about? Why was it so carefully hidden from her? And what could possibly be the connection between that woman, that building, and the mystery of her daughter's disappearance? The silence of the attic felt suffocating now. She could hear nothing but the sound of her own breathing, heavy and erratic, as she struggled to make sense of it all. Her mind raced, trying to piece together fragments of conversations, vague memories, and the chilling truth that had slowly begun to reveal itself. Could it be that her husband wasn't the man she thought he was? Could everything they had built together, their home, their love, even the memories of their daughter, be part of a web of lies? The thought alone made her stomach twist in agony. How could someone so close to her, someone she trusted with every part of her being, have kept something so monumental from her for all these years? But she couldn't hide from the truth anymore. The time had come to confront him, to demand answers, no matter how painful it would be. The decision felt impossible. What if she was wrong? What if Mia's warning was just a twisted misunderstanding? Could her sister have misinterpreted something? But the more she stared at that photograph, the more she realized there was no denying the nagging feeling in her gut. The truth was out there, and it was waiting to be uncovered. But at what cost? As she made her way downstairs, the weight of the photograph in her pocket felt like an anchor pulling her down, making each step feel like a march towards some unknown reckoning. Her thoughts were racing, and for the first time, she wondered what would happen if she didn't confront him. What if the lies were too dangerous to expose? What if revealing the truth would shatter everything she loved and put them all in even greater danger? Her husband was sitting in the living room, his usual calm demeanor now seeming somehow out of place. He was reading a book, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp beside him, but there was something different in the air, something unspoken. He looked up when she entered, a slight smile on his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was the same smile he'd always worn, but now it felt hollow, like a mask he'd been wearing for far too long. "You're back," he said softly, his voice just a little too steady, as if he already knew something was wrong. She stood there for a moment, the photo still burning a hole in her pocket, the weight of everything she was about to say hanging in the air between them. She had to know the truth. She had to confront him now, even if it meant everything she had built with him would come crashing down around her. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to keep it steady. "About the woman in the photo. Who is she, and why have you been hiding it from me?" His expression faltered for just a second, too quick for her to be sure, but it was enough. She saw it, an unmistakable flash of guilt. Then, just as quickly, he masked it, returning to his calm, collected self. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. But the words didn't match his eyes, which had gone hard, distant. "There's nothing for you to worry about. I don't want you to get caught up in things that aren't important." Her heart pounded, the feeling of betrayal rushing in. "No, this is important. Why was the photograph hidden? Why was it kept from me all these years? Why didn't you ever mention it?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up slowly, walking over to her, his movements deliberate. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "You need to forget about this. It's not something you can handle. You're not ready to know what's really going on." That's when it hit her. Something was wrong, far beyond the scope of what she had imagined. The sudden change in his demeanor, the way he was speaking, it wasn't just guilt. It was something darker, more dangerous. He wasn't just hiding something from her, he was trying to protect her from something.
But why?
What had he gotten himself into? And who else was involved? Before she could say anything else, the phone rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. She froze, her mind already racing with the fear of what it might be. He glanced at the phone, his face draining of color. He didn't move to answer it. Instead, he just stood there, watching her, his eyes full of something she couldn't quite read. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then, the phone stopped ringing, and for the briefest of seconds, everything seemed to hold its breath. But it wasn't over. The silence was broken by a text notification. His phone buzzed on the table, and she caught a glimpse of the message on the screen. "You're too close. Stop now, or you'll regret it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She knew, deep down, that whatever this was, it was far bigger than her daughter's disappearance.
It was about them.
It was about a secret that had been buried for years, a secret that, if exposed, would destroy everything she thought she knew about her family, her life, and her future. "Who sent that message?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. But he didn't respond. Instead, he reached for his phone, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he locked it, then slid it back into his pocket. The atmosphere in the room had shifted again, heavier now, charged with an unspoken tension that neither of them seemed able to ignore. "I'm not going to stop," she said, her voice steadier than before. "I need the truth. I need to know what happened, no matter what it takes." He looked at her, his eyes colder than they had ever been, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of regret there, as though he were considering something that could either save them or destroy them both. "You don't understand what you're asking for," he said, his voice now hard and final. "If you keep digging, you won't just lose your daughter. You'll lose everything." And with those words, the world shifted again. She was no longer just seeking answers. She was now faced with an impossible choice, one that would decide whether she uncovered the truth, at the risk of her family's destruction, or walked away, leaving the lies intact to protect the ones she loved. The stakes had never been higher. The danger had never felt more real. And now she had to decide, truth or safety. And either way, someone was going to pay the price. The walls around her seemed to close in as she stood there, her heart pounding with the weight of everything that had just been revealed. The secrets, the lies, the betrayals, all of it felt like it was crashing down on her at once, and there was no way to stop the momentum now. She had started down this road seeking answers for her daughter, for the truth behind the missing shoe and the strange messages, but now she understood. It wasn't just her family that was wrapped up in this. It wasn't just a simple case of a missing child, or even a hidden past. No, the conspiracy she had stumbled into was something far bigger, something darker. She felt like a pawn, pushed and pulled by forces far beyond her control. It had all started so innocently. The photo, the missing shoe, the strange feeling that something wasn't right. But the more she dug, the more the pieces had started to fit together in a way that was terrifying, far more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. And the worst part? It seemed like everyone she trusted, everyone she thought had her back, had been lying to her from the very beginning. Her husband, her sister, even her closest friends, each one of them had kept secrets, kept her in the dark, all while manipulating her in ways she couldn't yet fully understand. She had been so focused on her daughter, on the idea of finding her, that she hadn't seen the bigger picture. Then came the revelation that completely shattered her trust in everything she thought she knew. The photo, the one she had found hidden in her husband's old box of keepsakes, was more than just a relic of the past.
It was a key.
A key that unlocked a door to a much larger world, one filled with people in power, with dangerous connections, people who were willing to go to any lengths to protect their secrets. And at the center of it all, a name she had never heard before, a name that would have no meaning unless she had uncovered it on that fateful night. The Blackstone Group. She had never heard of them, but that didn't stop the terror that gripped her when she saw the name scrawled in the margins of her husband's old business documents. She had thought her husband was just a regular man with a normal job, someone who worked his 9 to 5, kept to himself, and loved his family. But now, the truth was slipping through her fingers like sand. He wasn't just involved in some obscure, off-the-record deal. He was at the center of it. And what was worse, so was her sister, Mia. Mia, the one person she thought she could trust, had been feeding her information, pretending to help, but all along, she had been part of the scheme. The moment the truth hit her was when she saw Mia's name, too, scribbled in those same margins. Mia wasn't just an innocent bystander, not a victim as she had claimed. She was a player, too, one of many whose roles were now intertwined in a plot far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just a family affair, it was a well-orchestrated network of powerful figures, all working together, each of them with something to hide, and each of them willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way. Her hands shook as she read the documents, her eyes scanning the names, the dates, and the places. The group had been in operation for years, influencing everything from local politics to real estate deals, but its true focus had been on something far more disturbing: human trafficking. Not just any trafficking, but something far more twisted. The missing children, the ones who had disappeared without a trace, most of them had been funneled through a network that no one dared to expose. Her own daughter had been a part of that network, and the photo, the missing shoe, the strange messages, they were all part of a bigger plan, a plan she was just beginning to comprehend. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her daughter wasn't just a victim, she had been a key player in this web of lies and corruption. They had taken her for a reason, and now, she was the one who had to untangle it all. But the danger was mounting with every passing second. Whoever was behind all of this knew she was getting close to the truth, and the threats were becoming more than just words on a screen. The menacing texts, the warning phone calls, they weren't just empty threats. They were a warning that her life, her family's life, was now in grave danger. In the blink of an eye, everything had changed. The stakes had never been higher. The walls were closing in, and she had no choice but to confront the very people she had trusted most. The fear gnawed at her insides as she realized she was on her own now, betrayed by everyone she thought would protect her. She had no one left to turn to. And the worst part? She didn't even know who to trust anymore. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and for a split second, she thought it was another threat, another cryptic message warning her to stop. But it wasn't. It was a location, a place she knew all too well. It was her own home. A photo followed the location, a shot of the attic, her daughter's missing shoe lying on the ground, the same one she had found earlier. And then, the chilling message: "They know you're close. They're coming for you. Do you want to see her again? Come alone." The words burned into her brain as she realized the truth. She had crossed a line. The people she was up against weren't just criminals. They were powerful, ruthless, and willing to do whatever it took to stop her from uncovering the full extent of their operations. And now, they were coming for her. The phone call ended with a click, leaving her standing in the cold silence of the night, the weight of her next move heavy on her chest. She had a decision to make, one that would change everything. She could follow the directions, go to the place where they were telling her to meet them, alone, and risk walking straight into a trap. Or she could run and keep searching for her daughter, but at the risk of losing everything. The decision hung in the air, suffocating her as she considered the unimaginable. Was she already too late? Had they already won? With her heart racing, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about finding her daughter anymore. This was about surviving, about navigating a world full of enemies disguised as friends, and about making choices that could cost her everything. The truth was out there, but she had no idea how much more of it she could handle before it destroyed her completely. The night air was heavy with a sense of finality as she stood in front of the old house, its silhouette looming like a specter in the dark. The location that had once felt so familiar, so safe, now felt like a trap. Her childhood home, the place where she had grown up, where she had laughed, cried, and played. But tonight, it wasn't a home. It was the battleground for the final confrontation. She had followed the directions, despite every ounce of her being screaming at her to run, to get out while she still could. But she couldn't.
Not now.
Not after everything she had learned. The truth had consumed her, and it wasn't just about her daughter anymore. It was about the dark web of lies that had ensnared everyone she loved and everyone she trusted. And it was about the man who had orchestrated it all, the man who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, never once revealing his true intentions until it was too late. As she walked up to the front door, the weight of the choice she had made pressed down on her chest, her breath shallow and uneven. The door creaked as it opened, and there, standing in the dim light of the hallway, was her husband. The man she had trusted with her life, the father of her child, the person she had thought was her rock.
But now, all of that was shattered.
His eyes were cold, distant, and there was a flicker of something dark in them that she had never seen before. It wasn't love. It wasn't remorse. It was something far more dangerous. "Come in," he said, his voice flat, emotionless, as if nothing had changed. But she could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, like a storm waiting to break. "You knew," she whispered, her voice trembling with the enormity of the realization. "You knew everything. About Mia. About the Blackstone Group. You've been lying to me from the start." He didn't answer at first, his gaze flickering to the side, as if weighing whether to say anything. The silence between them was deafening, and she could feel the walls closing in again. She had always known something was off, but never in her wildest dreams had she imagined it would come to this. He stepped aside, motioning for her to enter, but she didn't move. Not yet. Not until she had the answers. "You don't understand," he finally said, his voice thick with something like regret, but it didn't fool her. "I did it to protect you. To protect our family." She shook her head, her fists clenched. "Protect us from what? From the truth? From the people who've been controlling everything?" He flinched, a shadow crossing his face. "They'll kill us if you keep digging. You don't know what you're dealing with. The Blackstone Group isn't just a network. They control everything. Politics, business, media. They've been watching us for years, and I thought I could keep you safe. I thought I could keep her safe." Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. Keep her safe?
What are you talking about?
Before he could answer, a low voice interrupted from behind them. She spun around, heart leaping into her throat as she saw Mia standing in the doorway. But it wasn't the Mia she knew. This Mia was different, colder, more calculating, with a look in her eyes that made her blood run cold. She had been a part of this all along, a willing accomplice, and it all began to fall into place. The messages, the photos, the cryptic warnings, it had all been part of the plan. "Mia," she breathed, her voice cracking as she fought to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "How could you? After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you, how could you be a part of this?" Mia's lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. "You really think you were the only one in danger, don't you? You never understood, did you? You were never meant to know. You were just a pawn, just like the rest of us." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had been played. Every move she made, every piece of the puzzle she'd uncovered, had been calculated. But what was the end game? What had they all been working toward? "That's not true," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and rage. "You're lying." Mia stepped forward, her eyes dark with something she couldn't quite place. "I'm not lying, Sarah. This was never about finding your daughter. It was about keeping you quiet, about keeping you from uncovering the truth. And now it's too late." A chill ran down Sarah's spine as the realization hit her. She wasn't the only one in danger. Her daughter had been taken for a reason, not just as a victim, but as leverage in something far bigger. The Blackstone Group had used her, used them all, and now it was all coming to a head. But before Sarah could process what Mia had just said, everything changed in an instant. There was a loud crash, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the house. A man, tall and imposing, stepped into the room. His face was familiar in a way that sent a shockwave through her father. But this wasn't the father she remembered. This man was colder, harder, more dangerous than the man who had raised her. "I told you, Sarah." Her father's voice was low, filled with an ominous finality. "You should have stopped while you still could." Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Dad? What is this? You're working with them?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at her, his eyes empty. Then slowly he nodded. "I didn't want this for you. But you're in too deep now. There's no going back. The Blackstone Group isn't just about power or money, it's about control. And you're either with us, or you're against us. I was trying to protect you from this, but now," His voice trailed off, and Sarah felt the walls closing in once more. There's nothing left to protect. Everything she had ever known was a lie. Her husband, her sister, even her father, they had all been part of this monstrous network. She had no one left to turn to, no one she could trust. But she couldn't stop now. She had come too far, and the truth was more important than ever. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled to pull it out, her hands trembling, and saw the message. It was a picture, a simple photo of her daughter, sitting in a small, dimly lit room. But there was something in the background, a man's shadow, looming large and menacing. The message beneath it read, "She's waiting. Come alone, or she's gone forever." Her heart pounded in her chest as the weight of the ultimatum hit her. There was no time left. She had to make a choice. But the biggest twist of all came when she realized, too late, that the man in the shadow wasn't a stranger. It was someone she knew all too well. Someone who had been by her side every step of the way. And now, they were about to reveal their true allegiance. Her world spun, and the final truth hit her like a ton of bricks. The story she thought she knew, the battle she thought she was fighting, was only the beginning. The real fight was about to begin. And in the end, it wasn't just about saving her daughter. It was about saving herself and everyone she had once trusted. The final moments were a blur, a whirlwind of emotion, fear, and the crushing weight of truth. Sarah stood in the middle of the small, dimly lit room, her heart racing as the phone slipped from her fingers, falling to the ground with a soft thud. The image of her daughter, alone in that room, surrounded by shadows, haunted her. Her mind screamed with questions, with fury at the betrayal that had come from every corner of her life. Every person she had trusted had lied, manipulated, and used her as a pawn in a game she hadn't even known was being played. But as the seconds ticked by, as she processed the enormity of the situation, one thing became clear. She could either continue playing their game, or she could end it. She chose the latter. Her father, the man who had once been her protector, stood just a few feet away. His presence, cold and unyielding, loomed over her, but now there was something else in his eyes. A flicker of regret? Or was it fear? She couldn't tell. Maybe he had finally realized the depth of what he had done. But it was too late for apologies. She didn't need his pity. She needed answers. And she was about to get them. With a final, defiant glance at her father, Sarah turned to face the truth she had been avoiding for so long. Her husband, Mia, and even her father had all been pieces of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that had been slowly coming together, piece by piece, for months. The Blackstone Group wasn't just some faceless corporation pulling strings from behind the curtain. They were everywhere, in every aspect of her life, manipulating her, guiding her, watching her every move. She had been nothing more than a pawn in their game, and they had been playing her like a masterful strategist. But as the doors of the house creaked open and the cold night air rushed in, Sarah's thoughts shifted. She had one final choice to make. The message had been clear: come alone. Her daughter's life depended on it. Her mind raced as she tried to process everything that had led to this moment. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, but the answers only led to more questions. Who could she trust? Was there anyone left who wasn't playing both sides? As she made her way through the streets, every step felt heavier than the last. Each shadow seemed to hide a threat. Each turn felt like it could be her last. But there was something else, something inside her that refused to back down. She had been wrong before, but now she was certain of one thing: she would not let them win. She would find her daughter. And when she did, the truth would finally come to light, no matter how dangerous it was. She was done running. The final confrontation took place in a place that once felt like a dream, a beautiful house on the outskirts of the city, tucked away from the chaos of the world. The mansion where she had first learned of her daughter's disappearance now stood as the site of the last battle. The cold, empty halls were filled with echoes of the past, reminders of the twisted game that had brought her here. As she stepped inside, the darkness seemed to swallow her whole, and she knew the moment had come. Mia was there, standing in the center of the room, her face expressionless, almost resigned. She didn't look like the woman Sarah had once trusted, the sister she had loved. She looked like someone else now, a stranger, cold and distant, as if her humanity had been drained away by the very conspiracy that had consumed them all. "Where is she?" Sarah demanded, her voice breaking through the silence. Her body was tense, every muscle poised for a fight, but Mia didn't answer right away. She simply stared at her, her gaze hollow, like she had already given up on everything. "Mia, please," Sarah's voice softened, the emotion pouring through. "Tell me where she is." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of their breathing, the world outside fading into the background. Finally, Mia spoke, her voice low, almost inaudible. "It was never about you. It was never about your daughter. It was always about control. And you've been a part of it from the beginning." The words hit like a punch to the gut. The last shred of hope Sarah had been clinging to evaporated in an instant. She hadn't been in control. Not at all. She had been manipulated, just like everyone else. But the twist came when Mia's eyes flickered with something. Regret. Maybe? She took a deep breath, and for the first time, Sarah saw a glimmer of the person she had once known. "I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. But once you're in, there's no way out." Mia's voice cracked, and for a brief moment, Sarah saw the pain in her eyes. The same pain that had driven her to keep fighting, to keep searching for her daughter, for the truth. "They'll come for us both. It's too late to walk away." Sarah's mind spun, but she couldn't afford to waste another second. "Where is she, Mia? Tell me now." Mia's gaze softened, just for a moment, before she nodded toward the back of the room. "The attic. She's there." Without another word, Sarah rushed past her, her heart pounding as she made her way to the attic stairs. She didn't know what she would find. She didn't know if it was too late. But she had to know. She had to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. When she opened the door, the sight before her made her freeze. Her daughter was there, tied to a chair, her face pale but alive. But it wasn't just the sight of her daughter that shocked Sarah. It was the man standing next to her. The same man who had been lurking in the shadows, the one she had thought she could trust. Her own father. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. But before Sarah could move, the door slammed shut behind her. She spun around to see Mia standing there holding a gun. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice filled with finality. But as Sarah looked into Mia's eyes, she saw something unexpected, a flicker of something that could have been regret. "Mia, please," Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't have to do this." But Mia's hand trembled, and the gun dropped to the ground with a soft clink. "I'm sorry," she whispered, before turning and walking away, leaving Sarah with one last, haunting question. Was it really over? Or had it only just begun? The camera zoomed out, capturing the fading light of the setting sun as Sarah held her daughter close, her heart heavy with the weight of all that had been lost. The truth had come out, but it hadn't brought the peace she had hoped for. And as she stepped into the unknown, one thing remained clear. The game was far from over.